What is going on, alpha males? Welcome to the Alpha Male Podcast, the podcast where we talk about what it means to be an alpha male and the multifaceted aspects of that while keeping God at the center, Judeo-Christian values. After all, we are made in His image. Strong, dominant, courageous. For He created man in His very own image. Don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a review of the podcast, hit a couple of stars. Before we get into today's episode, a lighthearted discussion about nuclear war, fallout, and radiation poisoning. I normally plug in the bio, but I think I'll abbreviate it a little bit, what I normally talk about, and then talk about a little bit more as it pertains to today's show. First and foremost, I am a servant of God, a follower of Jesus Christ, a preacher and a fisher of men. I joined the Marine Corps at 17, did a couple of combat tours in Iraq, also served in the U.S. Army. Was also a law enforcement officer, LAPD, worked regular assignments and more specialized assignments. Been blessed to be the commander of an active shooter response team where our primary job was to stop active shooters in a very large metropolitan area. Been an FBI certified firearms instructor for a lot of years. Taught military, civilians, law enforcement. I've been blessed to be a professional big game hunter and guide. Been blessed with the talents to be a state rifle and pistol champion more than once. I've also been a private contractor for a 3-letter government agency I won't specify. And that's normally all that I say about that. And I don't want to sound like, oh, super secret squirrel, but there is a lot of stuff that I cannot talk about. I was very much involved with things we're going to talk about today. Quite a bit more training, I would say, than your average person does in this subject. And I've seen things and been privy to things that the general populace is not. That being said, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a nuclear physicist. I didn't even stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night. Please seek your own medical advice and please don't take my word for it as it is written in the Bible by a lone witness is not sufficient to establish any wrongdoing or sin against a man, regardless of what offense he may have committed. A matter must be established by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. So do your own research. Check out for yourself things that I'm telling you today. But many of you, if you're like me, grew up during the Cold War. You may be fairly familiar, or have been in the past, familiar with the threat of nuclear warfare. I don't own a TV. I don't generally watch the news. But even I am not ignorant to the fact that things are heating up in Europe. For decades, we were concerned about nuclear war with Russia. I think if you're talking about the midnight clock, hands are a little bit closer to midnight than they were seemingly just a few weeks ago, depending on when you listen to this. Every time I see the news, it seems like we're beating the war drums and being suggested that we should get involved. I don't know Putin, and I'm not going to condemn Putin. He strikes me as a man that will only get pushed so far. He also strikes me as a man that's not afraid to use force. With that being said, ought we to dust off those old civil defense manuals, those old civil defense films? Well, if there's nuclear war and nuclear bombs are getting dropped, that's just the end. I'm just going to throw up my hands and give up. I'd say then, yeah, you probably will turn off this podcast right now because you're a beta male. That's what beta males do. You go in the corner and suck your thumb while bombs are getting dropped. Alpha males will step up, strap our boots on, and get to work like men. There are plenty of survivors recorded from Hiroshima and from Nagasaki. Many people survived that. Plenty of people survived that reportedly and lived to a ripe old age and had kids with no problem. And the kids were fine. So if you're going to keep listening to this, strap up and be an alpha male and don't just give up before the fight even starts. You can survive, even in a city that's getting bombed by nuclear weapons. Again, people survived Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and that was the first time they had really been dropped, so they didn't really know what to do. If you listen to this podcast and do some research, you'll have a quite a big leap forward as opposed to those people. They had no idea what radiation even was. So if you're still listening, I'm going to assume that you're an alpha male. And you're going to fight, and you're going to do what needs to be done, and you're going to protect those around you, women and children, and people weaker than you, because that's what alpha males do. They don't take advantage of those around them or those weaker than them. They build them up and strengthen them and take care of them and provide for them and protect them. If you're ready to do that, then let's get together and help each other do that. Depending on how you want to categorize it, nuclear bombs, still in a couple of ways, but we'll round it up into two big ways. Blast, which consists of actual physical force of the blast, super high wind, several hundred miles an hour, and extreme heat, reportedly as hot as the center of the sun. Obviously, you don't want to be exposed to either one of these. You want to seek a shelter. The sturdier, the better. The heat can be very intense, reportedly several thousand degrees, but only lasts a very, very brief amount of time. So any kind of dense thing, concrete pillars, things like that, could shelter you from that. If you see the bright flash and you have time and you can't find any shelter, just laying flat on the ground, face down with your feet towards the blast and your head away from it, any kind of indentation in the ground that can shelter you from the wind and from the blast and from the heat, just a small depression, a ditch, a gutter, something like that, anything. A sturdy building may be good if it doesn't collapse. But if you expect a bomb to get dropped or see a bomb get dropped or see that flash or mushroom cloud and you're far enough away, if you can seek shelter from those super high winds and from that super high temperature, force of those two things. The next way that this bomb affects us, affects humans, affects really any kind of animal, is radiation. There's a couple of different kinds of radiation, but generally if you survive the blast, whatever dose of radiation you got is what you're going to get. And then now what you have to worry about is fallout. Now, without getting to nerdy, radiation will cling to particles in the air and the atmosphere, whether that be water, whether that be dust. It'll cling to whatever it is. Have you seen, the iconic images, the giant mushroom clouds? Well, all that material is likely radioactive. And that's going to get sucked up into the atmosphere and it's going to fall back down. Fallout. These particles carry that radiation back down. When it contacts you, whatever way that is, that radiation goes into your body. It will accumulate. It does really bad things. It's cumulative. I'm not going to get into the particulars of radiation sickness, radiation poison. Let's just stick with how do you avoid it? How do you avoid the fallout? Well, seek shelter. The denser the material, the better it is. This is the reason why when you get x-rays, they give you a lead apron. Than any kind of crazy other material. As far as common materials go, lead is pretty much the densest material, or at least common material that you're going to find. Why you wear a lead apron. You probably don't have lead-lined room in your house. Think denser is better. The more dense, the better. For instance, if you have a basement underground, that is good. You have the most amount of dense material sheltering you from the radiation. If you don't have that, whatever house or dwelling you're in, get into the innermost room of that house, away from your radioactive stuff outside. Not whatever room you want to hang out in, not your bedroom because you like it. That room is your pantry that's, 2 foot by 2 foot wide beside your kitchen. If that's the innermost room in your house that's protected the most by walls and material, that's where you want to be. And realize this about radiation, it has what's called a half-life. And it drops drastically. The amount of radiation after 2 days drops drastically after 2 days, and then again after 2 weeks. After 2 weeks, it just kind of slowly trickles, and it might take thousands of years for the rest of that radiation to go away. If we're talking massive doses, the first 2 days are by far the worst, and the first 2 weeks are still pretty high. So remember that rule. If you can shelter in place, don't leave at all for 2 days if you can help it. Most, even if you're not prepared, most humans can go in most environments 2 days without food or water. You're better off being super thirsty and super hungry than getting exposed to a super high dose of radiation. Again, I'm not a doctor, but that seems like a pretty safe thing to say. And again, 2 weeks is better. Stay in a basement or something like that for 2 weeks. The vast majority of that radiation in most cases will be gone. Realize this about fallout too. It's not like a symmetrical circle. Like if I drop a bomb, I don't draw a circle around it with the fallout. Like we said, the radiation attaches to particles. So wherever the prevailing winds go, and generally, and this is a very big generality in America, weather patterns move from west to east. But look at where the target was and where the prevailing winds are going. You might be better off a mile or two in one direction than you are 100 miles in another direction. And a lot of stuff plays into this, altitude, mountain ranges, all manner of things. But you don't want to be downwind of a nuclear event, whether that's power plant going awry or dropping of a nuclear bomb. Some other things to remember about fallout. And you don't want it to contact you, and you can keep those particles off of you. Something as simple as a plastic bag or a rain jacket. If you don't have a gas mask, just a wet cloth that you put water on or pee on, put it in front of your face. It may sound nasty, but it's a whole lot better than radiation poisoning. Anything that'll trap some or a majority of those particles from getting into your lungs. Radioactive material on your skin is bad, and your lungs is even worse. Another fun side note is that radiation really likes hair. So you probably want to shave off all your hair if you can. It'll grow back. Well, assuming you don't get so much radiation that it doesn't grow back. Fun topic today. But it's amazing how good plastics can be for stopping, not like gamma rays and stuff, but fallout. A raincoat, a plastic bag, one of those cheap ponchos, a big brimmed hat, some light material. Avoiding getting any on you at all is best. If you do think you got radiation, take those contaminated clothes, your hair, whatever it is, bag it up, get rid of it. If you have been clean, you've been hanging out in your bathtub, for a couple of days, it's time to move. Any kind of barrier like that is going to help. Rubber boots to not get that dust on you. A thin poncho. Gas mask if you have it. An N95. It's probably much better than nothing. So what are some things you can do to prepare? This is the Alpha Male Podcast. Like we said, we're not going to just curl up in the corner and suck our thumb. Well, the good news, if there is any, is this disaster is really not different than being ready for any disaster. There are some unique challenges. There are a few little differences. But mainly you're going to need the same things you always need. Food, water, shelter. So have clean water. Probably not going to be able to tell the water's been exposed to radiation. If you have some water stored up in plastic bottles, probably good to go. A lot better than guessing if the water in your tap is going to be clean. So having water stored. Having food stored. You probably don't want to be eating food that's been out, in the fallout, in the radiation. But if you have some stored in your car, in your house, like we talked about, most of that radiation, the vast majority, is generally gone in 2 weeks. You have enough food to last that long? I talk about you guys supporting on Patreon, and that's great. One of the people I support on Patreon is Viking Preparedness. And I got this from him, but it really is true, and I give him all the credit. Pastor Joe Fox of Viking Preparedness. He says the two things that are going to get you after disaster is starvation and people behaving badly. And I really think that's the case in a lot of scenarios. You're going to need water, you're going to need food, and you're going to need to protect yourself from people. How long have we been talking about, how many episodes have we had talking about that kind of stuff here on the Alpha Male Podcast? I may rerun a couple of those episodes just with general preparedness after this, just not in place of new episodes, but in addition to, for any of you that heretofore are not prepared and this rings a bell like, hey, I probably should step up, be a man, and take care of my family and those weaker than me around me. Just going to throw my hands up if I see a bright flash in the distance. I'm going to fight. I'm going to survive. God willing. One thing I will mention briefly, it always comes up when you talk about this stuff, is potassium iodide. Now, I do have some of that in the center console of my Hummer. I will admit to that. It's not what people think. You can't just not do anything and buy a giant bottle of this and think you're going to be fine. It's not like if you're glowing green, you're going to take one of these tablets and pee and it's all going to go away and you're going to be fine. It deals with a very specific type of radiation poisoning having to do with your thyroid and things like that, but it's not a cure-all. It's far, far better to not get exposed in the first place. Don't just think you're just not going to do anything and buy potassium iodide on eBay and you're good to go. That's not how that works. I'm not saying it's not good to have. Like I said, I have some in the center console of my car. But it is not the end-all be-all for nuclear preparedness. Again, know how radiation works. Stay away from the blast. Stay away from shelter from the heat, from the wind. Seek shelter from the fallout. Have food and water stored. Have a way to protect yourself. Psalm 91, no evil shall befall me, nor shall any plague come near my dwelling. I shall not be afraid of the terror by night, nor the arrow that flies by day, nor the pestilence that walks in darkness, nor the destruction that lays waste at noonday. 1,000 may fall at my side, 10,000 at my right hand, but it shall not come near me. I guess that'll be our tactical verse of the day. Tactical tip of the day. Did you know that apples are one of the best things you can eat after being exposed to radiation? Something about the pectin. If you have just straight pectin, but apples tend to have quite a bit of pectin. So apples and apple juice are one of the best things you can eat if you get exposed to radiation to get it out of your body. My wife said plums have a lot of pectin too, because when we make our own plum jam, they're one of the few things that doesn't need added pectin. So if you find yourself in a nuclear wasteland apocalypse, you can find some fresh plums, you're good to go. I don't think I'd be too worried about keeping the keto diet if I had a massive dose of radiation. With that, men, I'm going to say thanks for listening to this light and fluffy episode of the Alpha Male Podcast. Have a blessed day. Be strong and prove yourself a man. Oh, and I should mention that a lot of those old civil defense films that they made in the 50s are free on YouTube. Pretty good resource. You can check those out. If I remember, I'll throw a link to them. I generally don't link to other stuff. If I remember, I'll put a link in the show notes. Thanks, men. Have a blessed day.